Okay, yeah. Does the panel agree that it's time for politicians to take a more measured approach to the immigration debate as opposed to dancing to the tune dictated by the gutter press? And I'm thinking in particular of statements such as Gordon Brown when he was Prime Minister, of British jobs for British workers, or the recent UKIP billboard campaign, enough is enough. Thank you.
Okay, Jason.
On the gentleman's specific point, he made a point about a UKIP poster, enough is enough. And what that was pointing out, what we're saying, we're not anti-immigration, so let's clear this up first of all. We're not anti-immigration, we're anti-mass unlimited immigration, and specifically from the European Union. That was a point that was made in that poster, and I don't consider that anywhere a radical view at all. Opening the question of should we have unlimited borders to everybody who lives in the EU? You know, some people may think we do. I disagree, and for this reason, if we have unlimited immigration from the EU for hundreds of millions of people, what impact does that have? I'll ask you, sir, what impact does that have on the health service? What impact does that have on schools, on transport infrastructure, on jobs? Immigration is one issue, but that issue leads into many other issues. So we've not got to be afraid to discuss these. If you disagree, then it's fair enough. But let's not use this language where people are afraid to have discussion. This is why this discussion is happening today, because people have come together to have a rational discussion. On the main point about the media whipping up questions about immigration, I agree with the point you made. But I'll just give a really quick example. And this is a video that I saw a few days ago. And it was a video that was sponsored by the government. It was a video that was put out in Poland for Polish immigrants, sponsored by Eric Pickles, Eric Pickles' office. Really briefly, this video showed a Polish family who wanted to emigrate to the UK, and it was trying to deter immigrants. And what happened with this family? There was a man and a woman came. She worked in the health service. He was a labourer. The man eventually lost his job. This video said they ended up on the street. He was then beaten up by some British thugs, and he was ended up set alight and burned. So this is what the government's putting out. This is not what UKIP's putting out. This is not what the media's putting out. This is coming from the office of Eric Pickles, who used to be in Bradford. So I would say I agree with what you're saying, sir. But let's look at what the government's putting out. I think that's quite a disgusting video. I would never want to see my party putting out a video like that. But this is what the government's doing. Rather than having the guts and the backbone to say, let's have a proper discussion about immigration, what they're doing is they're putting out, frankly, what I describe as a very disgusting video, saying that British people, if you come to Britain as an immigrant, you're going to get beat up and you're going to get set alight. So you've got to bear that in mind.
Okay, thank you very much. We've got...
Cheers. Thank you for the panel, for everybody coming here. I'm a big fan and proponent of what is now called evidence-based politics. Before, in olden times, it used to be called telling the truth. I just want to allude to what UKIP, the gentleman from UKIP has just done, again, is the issue of discussing, contentious things like health tourism, saying by having unlimited immigration puts a massive strain on the health service. And I was reading the UKIP website earlier today and was stating some massive figures regarding the NHS cost. The reality is it costs 200 million. Whilst this is truly a figure, it isn't the hot topic issue that it's supposed to be. So my point, my question is it a time that politicians back up any claims they make on immigration by true facts and figures? Just to come across, again, the figure that UKIP states regarding the over-the-top migration of Bulgarians and Romanians by next year. Migration Watch, which is massively credited as this far-right, even, over-the-top organisation, estimate these figures at half of what UKIP are estimating. So is it time for evidence-based politics and politicians to measure what they say?
And maybe respond, Jason, go ahead.
Well, just to answer that gentleman's point then, he mentioned about UKIP putting out figures for Bulgarian and Romanian immigration, because basically next year we open our borders to Bulgarian and Romania immigrants. The point is, the answer to that question is very simple. Nobody knows how many people are going to come. The Labour Party... No, we're talking... The gentleman talked about extra people from Bulgaria and Romania. This is the question. And the answer to the question is, in the last wave of immigration, the Labour Party, the government of the time, suggested there would be tens of thousands of immigrants. Under Labour's watch, under those few years, we had 3.7 million people. So you could dispute the figures. Anyone can dispute the figures. The truth of the matter is, Nobody knows how many people's coming. But this is the point. The point that we're making is, surely, as a country, as an independent country, surely it's up to our government to make the decision who comes into our country, and in as many numbers. Surely, as a sovereign nation, that is the choice of any nation to decide that. It's not a choice of an international government. You know, if, for example, we had a referendum in the country, do you agree with unlimited immigration? I think I know what the answer would be. But if we have that referendum and the people come back and say to us, we're happy for total open borders, you know, and the other question that was brought up earlier, the question thing you mentioned about health service, if people want a total open door immigration policy to the EU or indeed to the world, well, they'll have to take the consequences with that. You'll have to take the consequences. We won't have 1 million young people unemployed. We'll have much more. We'll have much more than that. We'll have a massively overburdened health service, and I would suggest that we won't have a health service with a total open borders to you know, the EU and even further beyond. So you've got to weigh these questions up. Do you want to control your own borders or not?
Jason, I'm sorry.
Can I just, because Jim had already asked to come in, so can I ask Jim? Sorry.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right about that there is a kind of an issue about migration and the health service, because at the moment about 40% of doctors working within the NHS are actually all. You're right. Actually, if we stop migration, the health service will collapse. Thank you.
Okay, do you want a quick?
Are you questioning the
Question, can I just quickly answer that one?
Okay, there's a lot of hands up, and we've got to get on to another question. So I know this is a big hot moment, so maybe I will let you come back on that, and then you one final comment, and then we'll need to go on to another question. So, yeah.
The answer to the question is very, very simple. If we didn't have open door immigration in this country, and we trained our own people properly, we would have the doctors and nurses coming from this country. Because our education system's in such a state of disrepair, we haven't got people coming through in this country. And what the problem is, because the wages are so depressed in this country, the majority of our good doctors and nurses actually go abroad to work. So yeah, there is a problem with the health service, but the problem is we're exporting all our talented people to other countries, and we're getting cheap immigrants in it to do the job. That's the problem.
Okay.
I'd just like to say there's a lot of people who are born in Britain who actually leave the country to go work abroad. I'd like to see the statistics on that. But for you personally, I would like to take a DNA test to track your DNA, to see if you've got some immigration blood in you, you know, could refer to any sort of nation there. I would love to see you with that.
Just what, we're not anti-immigration, we're anti-mass immigration. Got to make that point.
Thank you. Welcome to George Galloway. Just the right to respond because he's been asked about his DNA.
Well, I mean, just for that lady's information, I was married to a non-British woman for 10 years, so I've got nothing against anyone from another country. And on immigration, what you need to have is a controlled immigration policy. You know, it's up to, you know, if you want to have an unlimited immigration, that's up to you, but you're going to have to take the consequences of that on your jobs and on your health service. That's all I'm saying. If the people want to make that decision, they'll have to live with the consequences.
Did you ever deported?
Yeah.
No, she's still here as far as I know. She's
Ben
still
hasn't
around.
had a second.
How can refugees present themselves to improve their public image as portrayed in the media?
Well, the question was, are refugees presenting themselves in the right way? The only way refugees need to present themselves to me is as genuine refugees. I don't have a problem with refugees, asylum seekers. You know, I and my party would abide by all the international conventions on refugees and asylum seekers. We understand the difference between benefit migration and asylum seekers and refugees. So I don't think genuine refugees and asylum seekers need to present themselves in any way. If they're genuine and they're genuinely looking for asylum, then we should do our bit as part of the international community and accept those people. Where we do have a problem is where people are coming into this country for the issue as economic migrants. And this is and the question I think was put in a way because I think people get confused with this, and I think the media deliberately confuses refugees, asylum seekers, and migrants. There's a fundamental difference. We understand that difference. We 100% respect refugees and asylum seekers, but on migration, that's a whole different story, and we need to look at that.
Thank you very much.
I would just like to ask the panel, but especially UKIP, how much they actually reckon the benefits, how much you get from benefits a week, especially as a refugee?
Okay. Do you want a direct answer first? That's a direct question. So would you like to just?
Yeah. Well, as I said, on the subject of refugees and asylum seekers, you know, we don't have a problem as a party with that. As I said before, we'll abide by the international conventions on refugees and asylum, so we don't have a problem with that. So, you know, I believe that they can't actually claim benefits as refugees when they come into the country. But as I say, we don't have a problem personally with that. You know, our problem is with economic migrants. So, you know, as I say, it's not a problem for us.
Okay.
Can
Thank
I
you.
just ask
Yes.
a question to you, because I'm delighted to
I'm
hear
aware there's more questions.
that UKIP is going to sign up to all the conventions. I'm assuming that means the European Convention on Human Rights.
Yeah, that's a direct provocation, so I think you have the right to
Just really answer that. No, but it is a very good question that deserves an answer. And the answer is very simple. We'll abide by the EU Convention on Human Rights, but our mission as a party and for our country is to bring our laws back to this country. When we regain our sovereignty in this country, we'll make our own immigration laws and we'll make our own asylum and refugee laws.
To suit your purposes.
But the main principle is, as I said to this gentleman and as I mentioned earlier, our principle is, and it's not going to change, we will always fulfil our international obligations with regard to refugees and asylum seekers. That's not going to change. That's the principles of our party. We're a libertarian party. With regard to economic migration, it's a different thing. So the answer to your question is, we'll come out of the European Convention, but we'll have our own rights. I'll tell you something for this. The EU talks about human rights. If anyone looks into the EU's human rights, they'll find out the EU's human rights are not human rights at all. Let's bring our ancient rights back, our ancient freedoms, habeas corpus, rights to trial by jury. They're the things that we need to bring back in this country.
Hitler pulled out of the League of Nations and had the enabling.
He's most upset that he's not a European bon vivant
Yeah.
or something else. But
There's so many questions here, but I'll have to just pick up that gentleman there, or the person up there that mentioned UKIP's policies of hatred. Well, I don't know what they are, but if you think that you're against that people who are against immigration because they want to save our public services are preaching hatred, then you'll have a very unhappy life, sir. But that's the first thing. George Galloway just
Since you'll never be elected anyway, I suspect it's not going to be a problem.
well, let me tell you something, and we'll have a little gamble later, sir.
All right.
In the next election,
Let's do it now.
the next election, we're going to return double-figure MPs. There's a fact for you. But on George Galloway, there we are.
I've just been reminded we haven't got a gambling licence. But
Well, let me just come back on George Galloway as well.
Double-figure MPs.
Because George Galloway likes to talk about capitalism. What we've got in this country, actually, and what we've got in the US, and what we've got in the EU, it's not capitalism, George, it's corporatism. We're against corporatism. Corporatism is big government, it serves big business. We're for capitalism, which is small government, and helps
And
small
free movement
business.
of capital.
Free
movement of capital.
What we believe in, George, what we believe in is we're not against immigration. We want a sensible immigration policy. And for these people in the audience to suggest that our policy is a policy of hatred. So do Australians believe in a policy of hatred? Their policy is like a point system. Well, if that's the case, then I feel sorry for you, love. You know, do New Zealand believe in hatred? Do Canada believe in hatred? I don't think so. But this is a question. I just want one last thing. This young gentleman there brought up a really, really good point about why are we making our human rights in Europe. He's exactly right, and this is not on immigration, it's on everything. As a democratic, as a sovereign nation, we should be allowed to make our own laws with regard to immigration, with regard to asylum, with regard to everything. It's not for the foreign politicians to tell us how to behave. And that's that. And if the British people decide, in their wisdom, that they want unlimited immigration and whatever they want, that is up to the people. But let's let the people decide. It's not to George Galloway to decide. It's not to the EU to decide. I put it in the hands of the British people.
Thank you very much.
Maggie Pearce. I came here today to give support to my many friends who are refugees and asylum seekers. I realise now that there's no problem. Jason doesn't have a problem with refugees and asylum seekers. My issue now is that I am incredibly worried about the fate of my 13-year-old grandson, who is a Czech citizen. If this sort of thing goes ahead, when will I ever get to see my grandchildren? If we put up the barriers now, you can bet your bottom dollar that other people will do it also. We'll have to have visas to get into other countries, which we by and large don't have to do from this country. It's going to become incredibly difficult. We have already had some free movement of people. The world is a big place. For heaven's sake, can we please stop putting down Eastern European migrants?
Right, I think we need to just get with some facts now on this subject. The immigration policy in this country currently is a two-tier policy. Anyone from outside the EU, there can be restrictions on, and there's a cap on those people. Anyone from inside the EU, there's an absolute open-door policy. Our policy, and I've stated this on a number of occasions, and you look at it if you want yourselves, we are the only party who doesn't discriminate against anybody. We want a fair immigration policy for everyone in the world. Just as the people from the EU are allowed to come to this country and work, we think it should be right for anyone from anywhere in the world to come and work. We want a point system so everybody has a fair shot of coming in. This lady mentioned, what about a friend from the EU? Fair question. What about
my grandson? Actually,
well, it could be anyone from the EU. But what about somebody who has family from the rest of the world? Surely you're not suggesting that you should have a discriminative immigration policy. We want a fair policy. Because we do want limits on immigration, because that's only the sensible thing to do. But to suggest that you're going to persecute people from outside Europe and say, we won't let any of you in, just so we can let hundreds of thousands of EU people in, I think that's discrimination. And I think that the Labour, Lib Dem and Tory policies is a policy of a discriminative, it's a discriminatory policy on immigration. And this sort of questioning really annoys me, because we're criticised for our immigration policy when it's the only policy that's fair, and that's a fact.
Well, it's only fair in that it wants to discriminate against everybody
Doesn't
equally.
George? No. We want to let 50,000 people in a year, and we won't suggest where these people come from, George. That's the difference.
Okay, I go now.
Cheers, thank you. On the what UKIP are excellent at doing, and hats off to you, you've done it really, really well, is trying to present a veneer of credibility and a veneer of equality. But one only has to go so far as to reading your manifesto to come across the hatred. Now, in terms of economic migrants, it's been pointed out very, very well that you guys view it as though it's this huge drain on resources. And on the EU website, the UKIP website, they make a point of saying that we will prevent anybody from the EU being able to gain benefits for the first 5 years.
Correct.
This makes the assertion that people are coming here to claim benefits. I promise you, sir, my father did not come halfway across the world to claim £60 a week. Thank you.
My question is, you keep harping on about the economic migrants. It sounds like to me you're all pissed off about the economic migrants and you're focusing all your anger on them. Once you've actually finished with that group, which group are you going to go for next?
Yeah.
Good point. No, and also what I want to...
do very quickly. Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Also, you keep harping about sovereignty. What are you on about? Explain that to me.
Okay, very quick response, because we've got time for...
Really quick response. When we finish dealing with economic migrants and getting a balanced immigration policy, that's all we're interested in. We're not interested in anything else. On the issue of sovereignty, what we are concerned about is, human rights and civil liberties. If you want to be ruled by an undemocratic government in Europe, that's up to you. But I don't think the British people want that.
Thank you, Jason.
I'd just like to come back on the gentleman's point there about benefits. It's been brought up a couple of times in the audience. Why the question was, why are we concerned about benefits? Well, let me ask you the question. If someone comes to the country, who's paying into this pot to give people housing and benefits? you know, if people in the UK believe that we should be funding effectively the European Health Service, then that's a business for them. I think the people who put into the pot should be people who get out of the pot. Well, you might laugh about that, sir, but in the last local elections, UKIP polled 25% of the vote, so 1 in 4 people agree with what I'm saying. So that's the fact on benefits. Next, there's the fact, George. Well, the figures are there, George.
Most of the country didn't vote.
They didn't vote for respect.
They didn't vote at all. It was only rural county elections, for God's sake.
You can't.
The cities didn't
that
get
is
a
the word
vote.
of the people, George. You can't dispute
The real verdict.
Okay, can I just ask on the question about Bradford? Can I just ask you what could be made better for refugees here in Bradford?
Well, I think the number one thing to do on refugees, I think it's been covered with the panel already, is language. That is the biggest thing to integration in any society, is language. If we can ensure that people have good opportunity to learn the language to a good degree, that is I think the one best thing that we could do. Can I just make one really other quick point on the general subject of UKIP being a party of hatred? Well, anyone check out the information, you'll find it's not true. And here's one reason. We're the only party who will not accept. We will not accept anybody into our party, even as a member who's been a member of any extremist group. The Labour Party won't say that, the Tory Party won't say that, and Lib Dems won't say that. And the reason why the Labour Party won't say this is because Labour have former BNP councillors standing for them in the last elections, and I think that's a scandal. So rather than having a go at UKIP, people need to inform themselves. We have got some very dodgy people out there, but they're not standing for UKIP.
I want to first of all thank the panel, who I think have done an excellent job in keeping to 3 minutes each, and lively discussion. We need more of these debates, in my view. Thank you very much.